Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sustainable Finance Podcast. My name is Paul Ellis, and I'm your host for these programs about developments in this fast-growing industry. In 2023, FuelCell Energy commenced operations of its company's Trigen-system for Toyota Motor North America at the port of Long Beach, California, where neighboring communities have been significantly impacted by decades of emissions from ships, trucks, locomotives, and cargo handling equipment. Betsy Schaefer, FuelCell Energy's Chief Marketing and Sustainability Officer, joins me for this Sustainable Finance Podcast episode to discuss how the Trigen-system produces renewable electricity, renewable hydrogen, and water from directed biogas. This will allow a reduction of air pollution in the neighboring communities and will avoid more than 9,000 tons of CO2 emissions from the power grid and more than 6 tons of grid nitrogen oxide gas each year. FuelCell Energy sees sustainability as an essential part of the company's business strategy. And Betsy joins me today to give us more details about the firm's sustainability strategy. Hello, Betsy, and welcome to the Sustainable Finance Podcast.
Thanks so much, Paul. It is truly an honor to be here. I always learn so much from your guests.
Well, thank you very much. We try to have all of the good people and right kind of people on these programs, and you're one of them. So thanks for joining us today. What I'd like to start out with is to ask you to briefly share the history of FuelCell Energy from its roots in research and development up to its current status as a commercial entity in the clean energy sector, if you will.
Sure. Well, oftentimes, Paul, the first question I get asked when it comes to fuel cells is, what in the world is a fuel cell? And, it's in many ways, it's similar to a battery. So, a battery uses an electrochemical reaction to create electricity. In the same way, fuel cells also do the same thing. What's unique about a battery is that, it has to be either it runs out of fuel or you can charge it. Like if it's your smoke detector, you might have to replace the battery. If it's your car, we're obviously charging it. What's different about a fuel cell is it uses a continuous source of fuel. So it can use biogas in some cases, it can use natural gas, it can use hydrogen. Really any sort of methane-rich fuel can keep that fuel cell running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's what makes it a little bit different from a battery, but in principle, they have very similar sort of underlying properties. So in the case of FuelCell Energy, we were founded by two scientists back in 1969 who were just really found the whole area of energy storage interesting. So they began innovating and experimenting with fuel cell technology. And so fast forward 50 years, FuelCell Energy is a public company that's traded on NASDAQ. We have operations in 3 continents. And are helping, our clients really on the energy transition path.
Okay, so let's explore a little bit now of how FuelCell Energy leverages its deep technological expertise to drive meaningful change in the renewable energy landscape.
Sure. Well, I always like to think that the energy industry is a great place to work if you love chemistry and if you love problem solving. And so, one of the things that we like to think about is that because fuel cell technology does not combust fuel, we really think about how we can address some of the big issues that the world's needing today. So one of those areas is this area of low carbon energy. So many companies are on their journey to decarbonize their operations, and fuel cell technology is a great way to produce lower carbon energy than you might be using if you're just using traditional sources of oil or gas. Another big area that we're focused on helping is in the area of capturing carbon dioxide. There's a lot of different, and it, truly just takes a village. There's so many different technologies out there, so many great things happening in the area of carbon capture. One of the ones we hear often about is this idea of direct air capture, which removes carbon dioxide from the air. We're approaching it a little bit differently in the sense that our fuel cells can be hooked up to basically a flue stream and capture the carbon dioxide directly from a big industrial source. So imagine you're at an oil refinery or a big steel plant, big industrial setting. Our technology can take that carbon dioxide directly from that flue stream and capture about 90% of what's coming out. And then that carbon dioxide can be used for industrial uses. I mean, one of the things that's been a little bit interesting to me as I've learned about the technology over the years is there's a lot of industrial uses for carbon dioxide. Everything from food and beverage manufacturers that use it for carbonation or maybe for chilling. There's a lot of use of carbon dioxide in medical settings. The other main thing that that's on the top of many minds today is how can that carbon dioxide be sequestered or put underground or in geological formations. So that area of carbon capture is the second area we're really focused on. And then the third big thing we're looking at solving and addressing is the idea of accelerating how hydrogen can be used as an energy source. Hydrogen has been kind of a growing area of interest for many years now, but it's starting to show up in areas like aviation fuel. Some vehicle manufacturers have started manufacturing vehicles that run on hydrogen. Some big industrial companies are looking at ways how they can use it as a fuel source. And one of the things that the questions I often get asked is, why hydrogen? Why is that even on the radar here? And the idea is that hydrogen can be a nice alternative to electricity because electricity can be hard to store. And as we all adopt more uses of renewable energy, there's a lot of innovation happening in how that electricity can be stored in batteries, but that is also can be challenging to do at scale. So the world's looking for a lot of different ways to use things like hydrogen. Hydrogen is kind of cool because it's actually pretty easy to store and can be made renewably so that when you want to convert it back to electricity, that's a better sort of on-demand way in some cases to create energy. So what FuelCell Energy is doing is we're developing technology called electrolysis, and we're able to produce hydrogen from electricity very efficiently. And that's a big task to solve because the more efficiently you can produce the hydrogen, the cheaper it is. So we think that we have one of the most efficient methods in the world to produce it.
Well, that's terrific. So there's a number of different ways that you're approaching this process of creating electricity and energy using different templates or template. That's not the right word. What am I trying to say?
Maybe use cases.
Yes. Okay.
That's another way to think about it.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Now, what are the primary sustainability concerns that your customers are trying to address in the use of energy in their businesses?
Sure. Well, I think most organizations are doing that hard work of figuring out a very logical path to net zero, and the implications that will have on their business models, on their products. How do they actually grow when they're trying to cut their carbon emissions? These are all really, big, ambitious things to figure out that require, the entire organization to come together. Oftentimes, there's some really big questions around policy that, or regulatory implications. These are all things that could take years to settle out. So I think, a lot of us in this orbit are trying to say, what can we do practically without having all the answers right in front of us? So where we come in is we can help sort of figure out some practical steps that can be taken from an energy perspective or from a carbon capture perspective to help them along that path, kind of no regrets decisions as some of the dust settles on some of the other things I just mentioned. An example might be, a university that wants to provide more resilience, a more resilient way to use low carbon energy. So they would use one of our fuel cells at their campus to power their operations. Another common thing that we see is how we can help community infrastructure. Paul, there's thousands of communities across the US that have wastewater treatment plants. And those wastewater treatment plants typically have what's called anaerobic digesters that help process some of the waste. And that waste produces biogas. And, so these, in the past, that biogas might have just been flared off into the atmosphere, but our fuel cells can actually run on that biogas to produce renewable energy. So it's sort of like organizations are just starting to think, like, how can I make use of some of the infrastructure I already have? How can I do it, in a way to advance my goals, my sustainability goals? And oftentimes we can find a really great intersection for fuel cell technology to help.
This is the second program that we're recording today where biogas has been referenced in the context of sustainable energy use. So it sounds like it's a growing opportunity across the spectrum, across probably many different technologies. So tell us how FuelCell Energy ensures that your solutions are innovative and impactful in addressing sustainability challenges within corporate America.
Well, I think what I would say to that topic is that at the end of the day, what many organizations are looking at is, number one, how do I reduce my carbon footprint? Number two, what impact am I having in my community? Like, what are the immediate human rights concerns? What are the immediate community-related benefits that I need to be thinking about? And number three, like, what can I do now? What are some of the things that I can start doing now? So on the decarbonization front, we can provide that lower carbon energy that would address those goals. On the community front, one of the benefits of what we offer from our technology is that we don't produce any NOx or SOx or particulate matters. So when you're those are really intractable things for a community. There's such bad ramifications, but if you can take that off the table with your energy source right away, that can be a real beneficial component to be thinking about. And number three, these are things that can be turned on, immediately. We're really proud to be a manufacturer here in the state of Connecticut, which is where our headquarters are, and being able to support so many communities in the U.S. With these solutions. And that's been really exciting to roll out. In fact, we just turned on the second largest fuel cell site in the North America, Derby, Connecticut, a couple months ago. And
okay.
So we're very happy to provide that to so many of our residents here in Connecticut, which is where we're based.
Well, listen, your 2023 sustainability report indicates a strong commitment to transparency and accountability. So please elaborate on the key metrics and performance indicators used to measure success of the firm's sustainability initiatives.
So, Paul, as a company whose business model really revolves around advancing, our customers' goals on the sustainability front, we take our own sustainability strategy very seriously. And for us, as we sat down to think about our strategy over the past couple of years, and as we looked 10, 15, 20 years out, we really, really wanted to focus on creating the best possible foundation that will serve us for the long haul. And so what we did was we decided to really map out our ESG strategy in a way that is focused on 12 action areas. And so we kind of have those divided into, of course, the traditional ES and G domains, but I'll give you an example. On the environmental front, the 4 areas that we decided to focus on were establishing our net zero targets and roadmap, number 1. Number 2, what can we do from a product efficiency and safety perspective? Number 3, everything to do with product life cycle and circularity, like how do we really build that into our products for the long haul? And number 4, a responsible supply chain. And so having those 12 areas has been a great North Star for us, because it really helps the entire organization see their own work in many ways and in our sustainability strategy. But in parallel with that, our goal was to embed our ESG strategy across the business. So we created what we call our ESG operations team. And that's really a cross-functional team that has some piece of those 12 action areas as part of their goals as well. So it's not something, our sustainability strategy is really owned by the business. We see ourselves as stewards of that on the sustainability team, but it's really owned by this cross-functional team. And so that's really been something it's been helpful for us to get everybody in the company on board and feeling, a great degree of ownership around where we're taking our sustainability strategy.
It seems that many companies are coming around to this kind of perspective with regard to sustainability, where it's run from the top down and the bottom up within the firm. And I'm glad to hear that your firm is taking up that approach to it. So what does it take to stay ahead of the innovation and competitiveness curve in the rapidly evolving landscape of clean energy technology, Betsy?
Well, I think for any new technology, there's always some reluctance to be the first one to take the plunge. That's regardless of the industry you're in, there's always that initial adoption curve. And certainly in the energy transition, there's been so many twists and turns. So we've had to take some risks, I think, as a company. And some of those risks have panned out, and some of them have not. But I'll share one example. Paul, I'm just walked in the door from Long Beach, California, at our Trigen site that you mentioned in the opening of the podcast. And what's really cool about Long Beach is it's the second busiest port in the U.S. The first busiest is the port of Los Angeles, and then the second busiest is the port of Long Beach. And For those of us that haven't spent a lot of time at ports, imagine as far as the eye can see, just stacks and stacks of containers. And the Port of Long Beach alone has about 25 miles of coastline that they are responsible for. And so the whole scale of it is pretty amazing. But they also, that really comes hand in hand with the tremendous challenge of managing air pollution. Is there's literally tens of thousands of cranes and huge trucks moving all this, all these materials to all corners of the U.S. and North America and South America, really from the port. So that is really evident anytime you show up as a port. It's loud. There's lots of pollution, but the Port of Long Beach and many other ports have started taking really ambitious steps to help reduce the amount of pollution, the amount of emissions that they're contributing. And in the case of the Port of Long Beach, Toyota, as you mentioned, is one of their customers. They import about 200,000 vehicles a year into the Port of Long Beach that are sent all over the U.S. And Toyota itself has laid out a very ambitious agenda for their decarbonization goals. And so, they were really ambitious in their thinking and approach as it related to what they felt like would be possible at the Port of Long Beach. And so, what we've been working on there is taking back to the biogas point, taking directed biogas in this case that powers our fuel cells at Toyota's Port of Long Beach operations to create both renewable energy, hydrogen to power Toyota's hydrogen fleet. They offer both passenger vehicles, and they also have a number of partnerships to develop trucks, large-scale trucks that run on hydrogen. And then one of the kind of fun things that comes out of the fuel cell when you're creating hydrogen and electricity is water is a co-product. So Toyota washes all of its vehicles when they take them off the port, and our fuel cells create about 1,400 gallons of water a day that are used to wash all those vehicles. So what was really cool about that project, though, was that sort of that the magic that happens when you have a very forward-thinking organization like Toyota who's willing to try a new technology. In this sense, this is one of the first hydrogen production facilities that's co-located where the hydrogen itself is being used in the world. A really wonderful and willing partner in the Port of Long Beach and the city and many of the other California agencies who really came together to support this work. It was kind of like a dream scenario in a lot of ways, but it really shows that so much of this is just that spirit of getting it done together as a team there in the community, and hopefully the first of many.
That's a great community to be exploring and expanding with these types of initiatives, right? There's a lot of influence in that direction and across the economy of California as a state. So I hope that it works out really well and that you transfer that capability to other places as well. So what unique strengths or advantages have allowed FuelCell Energy to punch above its weight compared with larger companies in advancing sustainability?
Well, I think that, and this is probably something that a lot of organizations are always trying to find the sweet spot for, but I think when we're at our best, when so many of the energy technologies, and in terms of how they're being adopted today, it's finding those recipes that you can, sort of scale. And so for us, it's been about, developing and innovating the core technology, but doing that alongside a great partner. And then, immediately sort of finding the right use case that provides the ability to scale it. So, we talked a little bit about some of the work we're doing with Toyota. Another example on the carbon capture front is we've been working really closely with Exxon over the past 10 years to perfect that large scale carbon capture technology, and getting those numbers up so that we can capture so much, like 90% or more of the carbon coming out of a large industrial stream is really exciting, and we think we can continue to improve that with Exxon's help. But we're actually building as we speak a big pilot project in Exxon's Rotterdam refinery, and so our goal there with Exxon together is to scale that technology around the world, and so we're excited to be turning that project on in the near future. Now, in terms of our own sustainability agenda, I think that the accelerator for us has been, a deep commitment that extends from being kind of in our DNA as a company whose mission is to empower a world with clean energy. That's how we wake up every morning and thinking about that. But that really extends from our employee base all the way up and in partnership with our board. And so we like to think of that as our true north for everything we do.
That's terrific. I'm glad that you shared that part of the process because we all know that it's top to bottom and bottom to top in every company today in terms of getting sustainability into the every cell, if you will, of the company's being and all of the people. So, Betsy, tell our followers where online they can learn more about FuelCell Energy and how they can get in touch with you to discuss the topics that we've featured in today's episode.
Paul, thank you so much for having me here today. The best way to reach us is at fuelcellenergy.com.
Okay. Thanks, Betsy Schaefer of FuelCell Energy, our podcast guest today. And our followers can join me again next week for another episode. I'm your host, Paul Ellis, and this is the Sustainable Finance Podcast.